Hello, everybody, and welcome on this sunny Thursday afternoon. I hope it's been fantastically sunny wherever you're joining us from. My name's Donna, if you haven't joined any sessions before, and these sessions are brought to you by ScreenSkills, and they're funded by Channel 4 High, Channel 4, Channel 5, BBC, and we're hugely grateful to our funders for putting these sessions on. We're doing about 6 a day, and they're booked all the way up in weekdays, all the way up to the end of May. So we're bringing you 9 weeks of training, talks and support throughout, all brought to you by ScreenSkills. So if this is your first session, please do sign up for some more. So it's really brilliant that you've joined us all tonight and you're in for a treat. Although you're on mute, this is a really, really interactive session. So use the chat box at the bottom to ask any questions. Camilla is not a wallflower, so she is not shy. She will answer any question. Her sound, her mic's a little bit, she's a little bit low, so we'll get her to shout, so bear with us. I want to just jump in and introduce you to the mighty Camilla. And I love these sessions. They're called Industry Greats. And most people say, oh my God, I don't want to be an industry great. But Camilla is totally happy with that title. And she is an industry great. So how we're going to run this session, we're going to find out about her early years and her general career advice, find out when she worked at the BBC, then when she went to Fremantle, and then when she set up her own indie. And this session is really about setting up your own indie. And we haven't done a session yet on setting up your own indie. So I'm really thrilled that we can explore that. I'm not sure many people at this time will be thinking about setting up an indie, or maybe people don't want to be on their own and they do want to set up an indie. But Camilla will definitely give you it warts and all. So Camilla, just chucking you straight in at the deep end, how did it all start for you? What was your big telly break?
I never wanted to work in telly. I wanted to be the first Labour female Prime Minister, but that didn't quite work out for me. And when I graduated, I kind of didn't even understand there was an industry like television. So I sort of fell into it in a really weird way because my in retrospect, it may sound like it was like arrogance, but it wasn't. I just didn't understand it was difficult to get into. So I just kind of called up running a post-production company in Soho and got a job. And then from then onwards, didn't really realise, kind of relatively easily got jobs. But in retrospect, without sounding, I don't think I'm an industry great, but I think I'm great, and I'm in the industry, so I think we're all great probably. But I think what happened was that I always was keen, always hardworking, always loved it. I loved telly. My mum used to complain constantly because academically I wasn't that fabulous, and I used to watch too much telly. And she's going, "You're watching too much telly." I mean, and that's the basis for my still ongoing passion. I don't think of myself as anything other than a television maker. I've never had any other kind of illusions of grandeur. I mean, I love telly. I love watching all telly. I watch highbrow, lowbrow, middlebrow, any brow, from every kind of factual to every kind of drama to every kind of entertainment. Nothing I'm not disparaging about any of it. I just genuinely think it's the most exciting and fantastic medium, and I'm genuinely humbled and delighted to still be making it.
And give us a really quick rattle through your CV. Really, really quick. What are the highlights?
Working for you, Donna, was obviously the highlight of my entire career. Yeah. So just to explain, I wanted to be taken seriously. So I started off as a runner. I was very keen and enthusiastic. I got spotted by people who worked at a company called Planet 24, and they offered me a job. I worked as a tape librarian. It was incredibly jazz hands there. I wanted to be taken seriously. I thought of myself, as I said, as very political, and I found it a little bit too, oh my God, we're going to Arnie's. Oh my God, there's a party. And it was all a bit, everyone snorted lots of coke, and it was all a bit The Word and the Big Breakfast. And fun although it was, and I was a dancer on The Word, the whole thing wasn't my scene, and wanting to be taken seriously was what I was about. So I applied to The Guardian, got a job with the amazing Dale Carnegie, and worked in Central Television making a live current affairs debating programme for them, which I did quite well in. And I was a producer, and then Donna gave me a job at the BBC as a researcher. Thanks, Dons. That was great. So I was a bit full of myself when I was like 23, thinking I was God's gift to the world. I was a producer at Central. Donna knocked it out of me and taught me that I was nothing much more than a researcher for her for a long time. So I worked in current affairs, where I was being obviously taken, in consumer television with Donna, doing Watchdog, holiday programme, lots of other things in the features world, and then kind of wanted again to be taken seriously. I always had this slight illness about being taken seriously, so went to Specialist Factual and worked on Tomorrow's World, and was deputy editor of it, following on from George Entwistle, kind of crazy times, and launched lots of different things in specialist factual there. Then I ran children's factual at the BBC, CBBC, which was great fun, working for the absolute brilliant woman who is Lorraine Hegarty, who I got on fantastically well with, and really enjoyed kind of like exec producing and commissioning programs, which I did at that point as well, and kind of launched loads of shows that I'm really proud of, which probably none of you have ever seen because you're all the wrong age group, or maybe some of you aren't the wrong age group, like Serious Jungle, and just really loved working on the fact in children's. It was a fantastic place. Went back to specialist factual as a kind of like a higher level, and kind of like ran sort of science for BBC One and BBC Three. Really enjoyed it, really had fun. Launched lots of shows there, including Trauma, which was the first time any had been filmed in that way on British television, because we never filmed anyone unconscious before. So I think we did 95 programmes of Trauma. I mean, God, I'm still making the same programme in lots of different guises for various different channels right now. But that was very successful, and did a couple of other shows which were quite successful too. Then Lorraine went off to Talkback. I went off to Talkback with her. And I was then head of factual. I stood in the shoes of Daisy Goodwin, who was an absolute legend. She really was an industry great, and is still an industry great. And had to kind of like, I happened to not flounder. I had quite a lot to live up to, and I sort of scraped my way through and launched. I think we've got 31 commissions. They were the days, back in the days when commissions were slightly easier than they are now. In quite a short space of time, and one of which was Great British Railway Journeys. Many others were commissioned, and some of which were successful to different levels, and had a great time. I was there for 7 years. Then I went to Cineflix, because I'd watched Lorraine have a horrible time, get fired from Fremantle rather painfully, and I'd seen things happen, and I thought, I want to go and do things differently, and it sounded like a too good to be true option. I was being paid a lot more money. So I went to Cineflix. I thought, I'm going to get lots more money. This is fantastic. This is all going to be wonderful. And within a year and a half, they nearly went into being foreclosed. Their company went under nearly, and it all became chaos. And at the same time, without boring you about my entire life exploded, and everything got very complicated. And my business partner at the time was Rob Carey, and he said, let's set up an indie. And I'd thought about this before and nearly gone down that path with Michael Mosley. But actually, it seemed like the right time for lots of very complicated reasons, personally and emotionally, where I was at. And we did, and that's Curve, and that was just over 5 years ago now.
Brilliant. And I'm going to just take you back a tiny bit. And you had brilliant mentors in people and brilliant champions in people like Lorraine. What was the best career advice you were given as you were going through your career?
The best piece of career advice I ever got given was given to me, I think, might have been by people. I used to choose mentors. One of the things I've always done is I've decided who I liked, and I just went after them. So for a period of time, PBJ, Peter Bennett-Jones was my mentor. For a period of time, Glenwyn Benson, who's a legend, was my mentor. I've had various different people who've sort of supported and helped me. Peter Fincham, and one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was actually from Saul Nasser, who was the editor of Tomorrow's World, and he said to me once, "You don't have to be liked by everyone, Camilla. You just have to be respected." And actually, since then, it's like the biggest liberation. I actually don't care anymore. You don't have to like me. I'm going to make programs. I'm going to continue to make them. I'm not stopping. And I'm going to carry on trying to make them to the best of my abilities in a way that I deem to be appropriate and trying to be decent, basically. And you don't have to like me. I really don't care anymore. I've got my friends and my family. I'm lucky enough to have those things. What I care about is you respecting me. And if you don't respect me, I can't help it. But that's what I aim for.
That's really clear. That's really clear. And just, you've had this brilliant career where you've done children's and you've done specialist factual and you've done consumer. Nowadays, this industry can really pigeonhole people. People can get really stuck. So how have you managed your career? What was strategic? What was planned? And what was good luck? And what was good timing?
Oh my God! Well, that answer to the question, I could be here all day. I mean, I don't intend to be a strategic thinker. I think I am naturally quite strategic, and I don't think it's the deliberate sort of like, I don't sit there thinking, what am I going to do next? It's going to be this, this and this. I've always believed, and a great piece of advice I had from someone not in the industry was never to follow the money, and I have never followed the money. So except for Cineflix, which was a terrible mistake because obviously they went under after a year and a half. But, you know, up until that point in my career, I never thought money mattered in terms of like what you should go for. So I wouldn't go for the commission that was about the money, and I wouldn't go for I'd go for what I believed in. I think it's a really hard thing to sort of say how I've planned it. I mean, the only real sort of, when I think back and think what was planned, I did sort of plan to do Tomorrow as well, because I knew at that point in the BBC, it was taken terribly seriously. It's back in the old days when, you know, if you wanted, those days I wanted to be channel controller. I wanted to be the controller of BBC One. And that's what I was aiming for. And I knew that I would never get taken seriously by the BBC unless I'd been in specialist factual and been seen to be at that level. And in those days, everyone in specialist factual had a PhD or had been to Oxbridge, and I was an idiot who'd gone to Oxford Poly. So, you know, I had to kind of like, I don't know, work my way in there, I suppose. But I think what I've always tried is to act with integrity, Donna. And I think you know this about me. And I don't try to be bad. I try to be very open and say exactly what I'm thinking and what I'm trying to do. I always can't quite understand why everyone else doesn't do exactly the same, because it's all very obvious to me. But it's not deliberate that I feel like that. I just think there's, you know, you've got to try and be good and well behaved.
And you'd been at the BBC quite a long time before you went to Fremantle, and you had a great reputation at Fremantle. And I remember, I think there was a tug of love over you going, weren't you? They kept trying to offer you different jobs. So when you first got into that indie world, what was the big revelation, or what was the freedom for you when you got into your first indie?
Well, that's a really good question, because I remember it very well. I mean, there was a great moment leaving the BBC, because the BBC is a funny old institution. It doesn't love you until you're wanted by someone else. And then suddenly I was like love bombed at every level. I mean, every level of the BBC. It was my daughter's, I think, second birthday, one of my daughter's second birthdays. And I remember just over the weekend getting calls from everyone. It was all a bit overwhelming. I loved it, obviously, because obviously I've always thought it was great. So it went down very well. But I always knew that I wanted to go. I decided to go, and I stuck to what I felt was right for me. But I would say that the real moment which struck me the difference of indies, and it was a terrifying thought, was in the first week or so, someone came into my rather beautiful white office, which was in Newman Street, overlooking Oxford Street. I had a stunning balcony. It was absolutely ridiculously glamorous. It was not done for me. I was just lucky enough to inherit it. And someone came in and said, "Here's your card." And they gave me a platinum credit card, and they said, it's a limit of £10,000 a month. And I remember thinking, what is this world I'm in? And it was, in those days, it's pre-recession, you know, it was a limo everywhere, everything was on expenses, rocker 3 times a week for lunch. And actually, rather than loving it, it actually terrified me, Donna, because I'd come from the BBC where, you know, you always thought about, you know, the little old lady's license fee and not abusing it and trying to be well behaved with your expenses. And this liberation, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I could be really badly behaved. I could be awful. I could be nasty to people. And it frightened me, because at the BBC, I always felt that I was being checked and balanced, and I was constantly being scrutinised if I did something wrong, or if I behaved out of turn in a good way. And I suddenly felt this, instead of feeling liberated by that not having those kind of like tests, I thought, God, I've really got to behave, and I've got to just try not to be bad, and trying to be good is actually quite a mission when you're in a world where no one's observing you, and you can be bad, if that makes, and you've got £10,000 a month on a thing. You think, whoa. So I think that was the biggest shock, was that the indie sector is really tough, because unlike working, I was very, very honoured and lucky to work for Central Television, Carlton Television, and the BBC as institutions that looked after me. That doesn't exist anymore as much. I mean, there is a bit of that in BBC and the old ITV companies, but it's just not like it was when I was there, where you're right, I could jump from department to department. That lucky timing was not to do with me being any good. That was a timing thing. The bit that was about me being good was because I'd done quite badly at school and had to fight my way through things. I was a fighter always, so I never thought of barriers, and I wasn't conformist enough to think, oh, I'm in this department, I wouldn't dream of doing that. I just thought, oh yeah, I'll do it, because I was a bit of, I suppose, a chancer.
Yeah. And you've mentioned when you got to Fremantle, you had 31 commissions. You won 31 commissions. So you've got a name for yourself as quite a larger than life person, quite a forceful person, but you've got a name for yourself as a brilliant developer and a brilliant pitcher. So what are you're not going to give away, you know, state secrets, but what are your tips about development and pitching? What are your top tips when you're briefing your teams now?
Do you know what? It just doesn't feel like that to me. I mean, it's very nice to hear you say that. I really take the compliment nicely. I'm rejected every day, all day, non-stop. I'm constantly arguing and disagreeing with almost every level. The only difference is everyone takes the call now. That's the big difference between now and when I sort of started pitching and coming up with ideas. My ideas are, I don't think they're any, they may have evolved and I'm more experienced. So of course I've got that great experience to call on, but my passion and my belief in ideas has never changed really. And also I think that, it's really weird when you start your career, and I'm sure lots of you feel like this, you think your ideas are really special, that no one else has had those ideas. But the truth is that maybe they haven't, but actually the truth is you've got to be relaxed about your ideas. And so actually you say state secrets, I'm not like that. I mean, I have to stop myself telling you everything that I've got in development right now and what I'm excited about, because the truth is my natural proclivity is to tell you, is to share stuff and to be excited. I mean, I love ideas and I love making programs and I love thinking about things. I see it as a kind of chess game. I'm constantly, and I love working for different broadcasters. I'd hate to be, I'm so pleased I left the BBC, not because I didn't love it, because I'm deeply passionate about what it stands for, but I ultimately feel the joy and the stimulation for being able to work for SVODs and cable channels and other terrestrial channels and different slots and different time zones with different people is just, I mean, it's exhilarating. So I don't know, there's not a state secret for development. I think you've got to be honest to yourself and what you're good at. Not everyone has brilliant ideas all the time. I certainly don't, right? But I do know that when I really believe in something and stick to it, it gets commissioned eventually. I mean, sometimes it takes years. Most of my really good ideas have taken anywhere between 2 and 10 years to get commissioned. Mostly I get no and rejected horribly.
And how do you run your teams? Do you do brainstorms? Do you do days out? Do you look for snippets from newspapers? Is it ideas in the bath? Where's it coming from?
All of the above, but the reality is that what I've learned is throwing money at the problem isn't the answer. I mean, I think the most important thing is to have a very, 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 very amazing development team who you can spin off. Because if I sit by myself, I mean, a handful of ideas I've ever come up with have come up from my brain by myself, sitting here thinking of something. Mostly it's some stimulation outside. So I'm very interested in all forms of arts. So I mean, as I've said, from very low to very high, there's not much that wouldn't interest me. I like reading all different sorts of magazines, all different sorts of newspapers, all different sorts of television programs I'll watch, and I'll watch very, very wide. And I read a lot of books, and I go to a lot of art, and I go to a lot of different sort of things, from opera to theatre to cinema to everything. And I basically take in a lot. And then I discuss a lot, because I don't really work very well by myself. I'm not brilliant by myself. I sit there and I'm like everyone. We sit in a room, we twiddle our thumbs and try and come up with something new. But what you start realising, Donna, and you know this because you also exist like this, is you've got to believe in yourself. You don't really have to believe in everything else. I'm not better than anyone else. I'm just the best. I'm trying to be the best Camilla I can be. Sometimes I achieve it and sometimes I don't. But that attempt to try and genuinely just find, what is my strength? What can I do? And what can I bring to the party? And that's what I focused on. So I don't think anyone else can do exactly what I've done, but what they can do is be exactly themselves and believe in it. And also listen, which, as you know, Donna, has been a lifetime lesson for me.
So I'm going to take, because I could go anywhere with that now, but I'm going to take a question from the floor, which says, what do you think has been your best idea that you've got commissioned, and why?
Okay, the best idea that I got commissioned and why was a show which was called Channel 4 Goes Mad. And Channel 4 Goes Mad, I was the most proud of almost anything I've ever done, although that changes every day, so don't listen to that theory. Because what we did is we took over the Channel 4 schedules, and we did something that most indies don't do. Often we're all a bit myopic, aren't we? We just think about what programme we want to make. But I really like that kind of challenge of what the channel's doing generally, and how can I harness great things about this channel. And so we made a show about mental health where we embedded people in different programmes across the schedules, from £1 Million Drop to Come Dine With Me, I mean, all the big Channel 4 hits, and asked the audience with lots of different trails, using trails, can you spot the nutter? And we use those words very wisely, and with a lot of suggestions and advice from Sane and Mind, who we worked incredibly closely with, to do a show about mental health and demystifying what mental health, what people who have mental health issues, which is pretty much all of us, but to different degrees, what people look like. And what they look like is just like us, of course. We made an incredible show with the amazing Andy Devonshire, who helped produce it. And it was a beautiful, incredible show, which I'm so proud of, because I mean, even thinking about it can make me well up now, because, we took a very gorgeous, blonde, lovely girl who, like the girl next door, and who all these employers said they wanted to employ, and all these psychiatrists said, oh, she's definitely all right. And she'd suffered massively from OCD and had been suicidal and been, in fact, housebound for like 3 years. So it was a really, really amazing kind of journey for her to go on, but it was also a journey for everyone involved in it, including me. So that I'm incredibly proud of.
Okay, and and I remember that, and you should be very proud of that. But possibly one of your longest running series was Great Railways Journey. Do you want to tell us about how Railway Journeys came about,
Sure.
how that was born?
Of course, my brother-in-law is an antique book dealer, so I've always been interested in antique books and what world they can take you into. And I had very good relationships with controllers and commissioners. I mean, I still do, and it isn't even like a cunning thing. I mean, there's lots of commissioners I don't talk to. They don't like me, or I don't like them. I mean, honestly, it took me a long time to realise this. If people don't like you and they're not taking your call, and you can't get a dialogue with them, and you don't have a rapport with them, it's just not worth it. And so there's whole rafts of channels that I don't speak to. I mean, there's no channel I don't speak to, but there's bits and bobs at channels who don't like me particularly, and then they don't like my shtick, and I don't much like theirs. But actually, I've always had good relationships with commissioners. So that idea came about because of regular meetings. And that's the first thing I'd say is, if you haven't got the access, however great your ideas are, you're not going to get them away. And to be honest, a travelogue's a travelogue's a travelogue. What made that special was the book primarily, and Portillo secondarily. And the book came out of me saying to my brother-in-law, after having had a meeting at the BBC where they said, okay, we might do some sort of travelogue, and we'd said trains, and they said, well, is there anything else you can say about it? And I phoned my brother-in-law as I stood outside Television Central and went, is there a book ever written about trains? And he went, there was this guy called Bradshaw. So I was like, okay, I knew nothing about it. I bought a book for 200 quid. The minute it arrived in my office, it was a beautiful old antique book. It was the book that the first few series were. I think they're still using it. I opened it, and it was like one of those moments when gold kind of comes out. It was like a Hollywood film, because every single page is cram-packed with information which is personal and incredibly detailed, unbelievably detailed about specific areas of the country. And at that moment I thought, wow, that's it, we've got this. This is it. This is going to be a hit, because look at it, it's endless, and we can make loads of this. Persuading everyone around me that was the case was quite a different story. And actually, to this day, I think terrible mistakes were made about not buying the rights to the book, not convict, because a lot of people were very snobby. They were like, oh, it's daytime idea. 5 episodes on daytime, why are you excited, is what I sort of was generally told. But I just, I think you've got all of these preconceived notions about where television should sit, what good television is. If you can make a great show for daytime, if you can make a great show for prime time, to me, they're equivalent. They're not, the annoying thing is the budget. You won't get as good money on daytime, but actually, I would be lost without daytime in my relationship with them. And Great British Railway Journeys came out of a great relationship with daytime and being willing to make programmes for a low tariff and not being snobby about it.
And how many eps and series did that run for in the end?
Did it run for? It's still running.
It's
still running, and it's up to, it's well over 250 now. I don't even know now. I've given up counting, because when we first did it, I was like, we could do America, and we can do Europe, and we can do India, and he's been to all these places, because it just suddenly realised that this one man that was this incredible access point to a whole system of something that we could all relate to. And Portillo, who was an absolute genius, and that wasn't my idea. That was Lorraine Hegarty, who I know you've had on before. She said we should try Portillo. Anyway, we got him in for a meeting. I started chatting to him. I didn't even realise he'd been the transport minister. There you go. Anyway, that was a brilliant thing.
And so talk to us about pitching. And in my day job, I sit on the 7th floor at the BBC with all the commissioners. There is nobody that treads those boards more than Camilla. I am telling you, she is in virtually every day. So you've explained it's all about relationships and having those deep relationships with commissioners. But how do you go about pitching? I can imagine you're a bit shy and you hold back a bit, but how do you go about pitching to those commissioners?
I'm in there every day, Donna, and how little primetime television I'm making for the BBC. You might say I'm not that successful. The BBC, I love it dearly. It's a hobby. If I'm in there because I love them, and I really would like to be making more for them, of course. But actually, it's not where business sits. Let's just get that straight. Anyone who's trying to only get BBC commissions will have a terribly difficult time of it, basically, because there's so many producers out there who are fantastic, making lots and lots of output. I think pitching, pitching's about listening and talking, you know, and actually, you know, it's not just being able to sell. It's also, now I think I've got a reputation for making programs that are well made. I think, you know, I'd like to think that although not every program's been a huge hit, no programs have bombed that we've made. I mean, certainly none that I could spring to mind. Maybe you can pull out one from the bag. But, you know, and nothing I'm embarrassed of. Everyone I'm proud of for different reasons. And we put a lot of effort into delivery at Curve, and I always have done prior to Curve. And I think that is also what helps pitching, because if you can make a program and you haven't let them down, I mean, it's really interesting that this horrific time that we're in now. And I said this to you before, Donna, it's been an implosion and an explosion at Curve. I mean, complete chaos for everyone. I'm sure everyone feels the same. And loads of programs got into all sorts of trouble that we couldn't even have envisaged a few months ago. But what's been really, really amazing is all the broadcasters, every broadcaster, every terrestrial broadcaster and Discovery have all commissioned us with fresh, new originations since this has happened. And do you know why? And I now know why. It's not because I'm so fabulous at pitching, I'm so lovely and whatever, although obviously these are all truths, because I am, after all, an industry great, Donna, lest we forget. And I certainly won't let you forget you've called me one, love. But putting that to one side, the reality is it's because of delivery. Because they want to know that they're going to get stuff that's going to actually work. Can you do it on tariff? Can you do it on time? Will you let us down? Are you going to be there? Are you going to be in the edit? When I call, are you going to answer the phone? Because actually I was once told that by a controller. They said, I know, because they'd called me on maternity leave. They said, I know I can call you and you'll answer the phone and you'll make it happen. And that, I think that's beyond, the pitch is all part of that, you know. It's not separate. It's not, I am, you know, I like the people I pitch to. I don't pitch to people I don't like. And I like the ideas I pitch. I don't pitch stuff that I don't believe in. But I'm pitching stuff that's probably very similar to a lot of the people in this Zoom room, you know. And so I'm not better than they are. I just have maybe got a bit more experience and a lot of the other ingredients.
Okay, and I'm not going to show Railway Journeys because I think there's so many questions on here. So I'm going to make an executive decision not to show that and show the two.
Everyone's seen it. Everyone's grandma's seen it anyway, even if they haven't.
And the two clips at the end are my favourite, so we'll do those. But so let's move on. So you've left Fremantle, as you say. Cineflix was a bit of a blip, and that all imploded. And so setting up your own indie with a mate and a colleague. What most surprised you about setting up an indie? What had you not expected?
I mean, that's really, I think I'd thought about it for so long, Donna, and I had so many people approach me with so many different kind of options of how I could set up an indie, and I just had absolutely no interest. I mean, I'm going to tell you the truth, which might not match what you want to hear. My life was imploding at the time. I was getting I was going through a very difficult divorce. My life was really, really complicated, and I've got 4 kids, and it was all very chaotic. And I think if I'm really honest, had I thought about it, I might not have done it. So I didn't think about it. And I can't tell you what surprised me the most. I think what surprised me the most, the amount of paperwork and the amount of stuff you've got to go through legally, and the amount of kind of like thinking you've got to do about your exit strategy and about what that might look like and what your plans and why you're in that company. I mean, in a weird way, you've got to think about the end before you can do the beginning bit. All of that was kind of like a revelation. But as I said, it sort of happened at such a crazy time for me, where, you know, my family home I'd lost and everything had changed in my life, that it was quite a, you know, I didn't really, probably in a good way, I probably didn't concentrate on it as much as other people would. So I'm forever grateful. And I said this at my very happy second wedding a few years ago. I am forever grateful to the people who I work with at Curve when we set that up, because I didn't set it up alone. I set it up with 3 incredible people who to this day I love working with and who I'm eternally grateful to.
And did you take advice or business advice? Who did you take advice from when you were setting up? What was kind of really important?
Everyone, Donna, because I think the biggest mistake you make is thinking you know it all. You know, I genuinely, maybe I come across as confident and being self-assured. Well, yeah, I probably am those things, but I also don't think I know everything. I know what I don't know. I knew nothing about setting a business, so I spoke to everybody. I spoke to people who were in television and people who weren't in television. And I started realising how business worked. I mean, I'd had 7 years at Talkback of transition from the BBC to a commercial environment. And in all honesty, you know, remember I left the BBC and I loved the BBC. I was happy at the BBC. I didn't leave under any bad vibe. I left of my own choice, and it still with the best will in the world and with the best support in the world, with Lorraine and all these fantastic, Sarah Gator, these incredible people around me, it took me, I would say, 2 to 3 years to get even vaguely commercial and understand commercial. And partly because ringing in my ears, and I won't say who this was, there was a head of factual at the BBC when I left, those who know will know, and she said to me when I left, "I can't believe you, Camilla, you've gone for the money." And it almost destroyed me as a comment, because it was so the antithesis of how I ever wanted to operate. And it made me really question, what did I go for? What was this about? And it isn't the money, actually, but here's the truth. If you are commercial and you are creative, then you are winning the game. That's the bottom line, because you need to understand that commercial is not about just making money. It's about making people watch your program, getting people to engage, people engaging who you want to engage. And that's the chess game that I get excited about.
And you've mentioned the level of paperwork. So you're clearly a creative who comes alive with ideas. What does that do to you when you've got to be responsible for people's wages? You've got to bring the milk in the morning, order the loo rolls, do the paperwork, and be a creative. How do you split your brain like that?
What I did was, I wasn't greedy, Donna, so I didn't say I own 100% of Curve. That was the thing I didn't do. I don't own 100% of Curve. I own a third of Curve, right, roughly. And the reason for that is because I don't want to do those things. I don't want to worry about the loo roll, but I do want someone to care about it. And I really want someone to care about the staff. And I really want it to happen well. And one of the skills that I learned from great people like yourself, Donna, was to delegate effectively. So I know what I can do. The truth is, I can sit and look at a spreadsheet. I'm fully capable of doing it. And when I do have to, I do it. I don't enjoy it. It's not what turns me on, so to speak. So what I like to do is be creative and be at the heart of development and be at the heart of delivery and be at the heart of the communications with the commissioners. That's the bit I like doing. And therefore, for me, Curve is now created in a way that it supports that, allows me to do those things. I'm completely across what goes on with the staff, and I'm delighted at kind of like the sense I get, and this is maybe my naivety, that people really like working there and want to work there. And, you know, we've been voted best place to work by Broadcast and all that shit, whatever that means. But, you know, it feels very good to me to work in a place where I see happy people at work. And that is great, but not all managed by me, I can assure you.
And there's lots of lovely comments from people on here who've worked for you and saying you're lovely. And I know loads of freelancers who've had an amazing time working for you, and I don't know one bad story.
Oh, that's really nice.
And that's very rare. But does that keep you awake at night? Like now with COVID, like, how am I going to pay the salaries? What if I have to lay someone off? What if I can't keep someone on?
Donna, that is what's bothered us. I mean, the truth is, we're not going to go under. It's not going to be a disaster. You know, we've taken a bump. It's been very painful. You know, as I said, we've had a lot of commissions in the last few months. Not all of them are going to be worth a lot of money, but they've made us feel better about ourselves. We managed to keep staff. We have furloughed a very small amount of staff. We've had to stop some things happening. There were productions we were going to go bang into, like 999 on the front line. We were due to do a massive hospital series for one of the broadcasters that was going to be very high end and very expensive, and we've had to stop that, obviously. And we were in the process of just finishing another series, which I can't discuss, which was a kind of like another medical-y sort of thing. There you go, still doing medical after 25 years. And those that, you know, we've lost staff because of that. Well, we haven't been able to hire people, but we've tried to behave well. And I'm going back to being good. You know what? We've tried to make up money to people. We've tried to make sure that people aren't suffering and that we can rehire people. And so far, we're okay. You know, it's not been brilliant. We've got a bump, but it does keep us up at night. It's what we talk about every day. We have a meeting every day with the directors of the company, and we talk about every member of staff and what's going on. Where are they? What's happening? How can we keep them? Are we going to have to let them go? Do we explain to them? Can they go part-time? Is there something we can do? Because it's a horrific time for everyone. And we are, you know, we're confident we'll get through it, as we all will. But, you know, this is awful for people.
Yeah. And what are the best bits of running your own indie, and what are the worst bits?
I'm my own boss. I always was, though. So to be honest with you, when people sort of talk about being their own boss, I'm like, as you know, Donna, I've always sort of operated in my own way, which may have been a bit painful when you were officially my boss, although I did always respect you, Donna. I think, you know, I think what's really emancipating is that if you don't want to do it, you don't do it. So there's certain people and channels who I feel no affinity to. They don't really like me. I don't really like them. I don't bother them anymore. There was a point when I tried with everyone, and now I like that freedom. And I mean, what I really love about running my own indie is that I can wake up and decide what I want to do and get excited about it. and there's there's always an idea. There's always ideas that I'm really, really passionate about, or I really believe in, about certain subject areas that I really want to get made, and I will not stop. I'm very relentless. As you know, if I decide I want to go for something, I'm tenacious about it. I will, obviously I take rejection politely and correctly, but I won't forget the idea, and I'll think about it, and I'll think, how can I make it happen for that person, or let's wait a year, because commissioners come and go, Donna, but I'm a program maker and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
Right, brilliant. So, that amazing breadth, you work for so many broadcasters. How would you sum up your USP, or do you think it's rubbish to say an indie has a USP? Where do you sit on that?
I mean, I don't know if I haven't got a really neat corporate line, but I tell you what I feel. Watching it that back makes me think it even more. This sounds really wanky, but it's about humanity. It's about people. I like people. I actually do. I actually like people. I'm interested in everyone. As you know, I've always talked to the cleaners and the security guards in every organisation I've ever worked in, every level of every person. I'm interested. And I think that what I'd say is we're interested and we like people. And we genuinely think that most people are good and most people can be good. And I'm interested in exploring that on every level. That sounds really naff and really sort of like bullshitty, but actually, genuinely, if you cut the programs through, from Secrets of the Driving Test that's on tonight, to kind of like watching something like the cleaning program, which I'm so proud of, called The Cleaners, which is, the most amazing working class, diverse talent in the world, who's so warm and fantastic. And please God, we'll be doing loads more of those. Those are the programs. I feel so proud of that. Giving a voice to people, just showing that we're all decent. The thing we're doing with Ross Kemp, which you might have heard was announced today, which is about NHS volunteers, and about how amazing the volunteers are. We've been filming that. Amazingly, we've been filming that for the last 2 weeks, and it is, I'm so excited about that going on air for Carla Maria. And she came to us with that commission. That was her idea, not mine. And that's because we've had such a great working relationship, and because we had to stop about 1 million other productions.
And that's another hallmark of your productions, that you are brilliant with talent, whether it's Portillo or Ross Kemp or the wonderful Vicky McClure. So how do you start to build those relationships? How, for example, did you get Dementia Choir away with Vicky McClure?
Okay, well, Dementia Choir existed as an idea for 2 years, as you know, Donna, before, and I've tried pitching it for 2 years. In fact, Charlotte liked it 2 years before it actually got commissioned. But anyway, now that's a whole other long-winded story. That show existed before Vicky, and actually a brilliant development producer of ours came in and said to me, after I'd slightly given up on it, because I've been trying to sell it for so long. I don't give up, but I do get exhausted and pause for a bit and then come back to things and go round and about the stuff. And said, actually, are you interested? Vicky McClure is the patron for the Alzheimer's Society. Do you want to meet her? And I was like, yeah, okay. And I'm not celebby at all. I do get on well with talent. And I know why I do. I say it as it is, Donna. I don't lie. I tell the absolute truth. I'm not impressed by celebrity. I hated it when I first worked with celebrity and I was doing all those things at Big Breakfast and The Word. I found it all a bit bullshitty. It didn't turn me on. I still have a slight moment when I hear the word celebrity. It makes me feel makes me want to be a bit sick. I say that to celebrities. They know that. I don't try and work with lots of them, but the ones I'm interested in, I'll tell them why I'm interested. Vicky is one of the most extraordinary pieces of talent who has ever walked this earth. And actually, her acting is scratching the surface of what that woman is capable of. She is extraordinary, and I am delighted to be working with her. And we are doing another series, obviously not anytime soon. All our great, no, it was commissioned, but obviously that'll be one of the many programs that we're not making right now that we should be making right now. But I'm very hopeful that we will be making it early next year. The channel have been unbelievably supportive. We've got brilliant commissioners, and it is, we love it.
She was shortlisted for RTS Presenter of the Year as well, wasn't she? So
yeah, she was, and also, it's up for a BAFTA. I think. Anyway, it's whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna come to all your questions in the chat. There's lots of people saying you're a breath of fresh air and love your straight talking. There's a question here that says, looking at that show reel, you create a slate of programs that appeal to a really broad audience, and you've never had that snobbery, have you? How do you make programs with the audience in mind, and to as big an audience as possible?
It's all. This sounds really awful, but it really matters to me. Ratings. It really upsets me if shows don't rate, and so I will interrogate where we went wrong, and we go wrong so much, and it's often in the title's not quite right, or we just haven't quite pitched it correctly for the audience. It matters that going back to what I don't know how to answer that question, because it's really hard, because I don't have an organising principle across all the programmes. The organising principle is really simple. Am I excited about it? Sometimes we sit in development meetings and I know that if I'm not fully excited, however good the idea is, I can tell it's a good idea. If I don't want to pitch it, I won't. And then we'll often go in to meetings, Rob and I, and we'll have like 10 ideas written down in front of us. And I'll just look at them and I'll sit opposite the person and I'll start talking and I'll think, oh God, you know, I don't even believe in 5 of these, or even 8 of these, or even all of them. And sometimes I just go completely off piece because I'll be listening to what they're saying. So I haven't really got a straight answer for how do you get ratings, or how do you think of ideas?
The broadest audience, or thinking with, developing an idea with the audience in mind.
I am the audience, and we're all the audience. So I'm watching what rates, and I'm thinking about what rates, and I'm not surprised that Sewing Bee did brilliantly last night. I watched the ratings avidly. I'm obsessed by ratings. The shows that are doing really well, of course, Repair Shop's doing well. Cara Maria's a bloody genius when it comes to commissioning, but she knew it at the beginning, and we all knew it. We were all pitching similar ideas. They brilliantly won it. They've done it. They've imagined it amazingly. That is a great show, and it deserves 6 million. It got. I mean, for God's sake, wake up, everyone. People just want to see lovely stuff. I mean, often I think commissioners think too cynically and about their own ego and about how they can tell their press release story, so that they, when they leave after 2 or 3 years and set up their indie or whatever they go on and do, or try and become a controller, they can say, I did that show. And I don't approach it like that. I really don't. I approach it from what actually would I like to see? What would appeal to me, and what would appeal to my friends? Or if not just to me, what could appeal to someone else? Because I don't actually, Great British Railway Journalists, I think it's brilliant and I love it. I don't watch it. I don't know what to say. I watched it always to make it, but it wasn't the show for me, but I knew who it would fit.
And the people in the room, start to send me your ideas and your questions, because I'll pick them up. So what's your one piece of advice if somebody was thinking of setting up an indie now? What would be your advice?
If you can't take rejection, and keep a smile on your face, and have joy and comedy and have wit to you, not necessarily with you, but I certainly hire around me people who make me laugh a lot, because otherwise it's an incredibly tough game out there. But you will not fail if you believe and you listen and you take advice from people. I mean, I don't know everything. I know very little, but I'm willing to sort of like ask questions and learn. And also, accept when someone says no a lot to you, you just have to think, well, why are they saying no? They say no because they don't like the idea, they're not like me. Is it the wrong thing? I mean, you've got to really question it without becoming a total paranoid wreck.
And obviously, we know it's a massively crowded market with indies, and never a tougher time for indies. How do you think, this question from the floor, how can an emerging indie break through, do you think?
I think, honestly, it's a bit like everyone's saying, oh, everyone's got a book in them. If everyone's got an indie in them, let's say, then your indie has to be about something very true to you, And I've tried to make Curve true to me. I mean, and I feel proud of what it is because it's true to me, and all bits of it sort of add up in my head. I can give you a complete rationale for every single program we've had commissioned, why it works for me. So I wouldn't try and mirror or match anyone else, because I look at Stephen Lambert, I think the guy's a bloody genius. I look at Richard McKerrow, the man's an absolute god in the industry. They're the greats, and I look at these people and I think, wow, they've done so well, and they've done it like this and they've done it like that. But I'm not them. I'm not Lambert, and I'm not McKerrow, and I'm not saying I can never make a show hopefully as successfully as them, but I'm not them, so I've just got to be me. And I think stop trying to be something you think will work. Don't try and fit in, but believe because you've got the knowledge of knowing that if you think it's about a baking show like Richard McKerrow did and tried selling it for 10 years, then you stick to that. You believe in it. That's what you believe in, what your belief is.
Now, I've got loads and loads of people on here saying, can they come and work with you? Can they have a job? But in all seriousness...
Catherine Mabb is our talent manager. Contact Catherine Mabb. She's amazing.
I will put Catherine's email in this chat so you can contact Catherine and ask Catherine off. But what are you looking for when you start up? And I know you're involved in that. What are you looking for when you crew up? And particularly, there's quite a few new entrants on here. What are you looking for in new entrants as well?
Okay, well, we hire a lot of new entrants. We've got a whole Curve Foundation scheme, but it's really diverse based. So I mean, really that works alongside our company. We've got a charity set up, and we work particularly to get in new, diverse, fresh talent. So very early entrants, it's quite hard to get in if you're not part of that scheme or involved in that. You should talk to Catherine Mabb about that. And that's something we're looking to grow and hoping to roll out, not as a Curve thing, but as an industry-wide thing, so that all the indies in the country can have a template to how to set up a kind of like a diverse intern training scheme. So that's entry level. I mean, at every level, the truth is I am interested in people who are passionate, who are intelligent, and who are hardworking and tenacious. And you know what? In my entire career, I've said the same thing every time I've done anything like this, which I've been lucky enough to do quite a few. And I always say the same thing. It's like, why aren't you emailing people and telling them why you think they're great as opposed to why you think you're great? It amazes me how many emails I get and my team get telling why someone should be employed. What's much better is to go, hey, I saw your show, I particularly like what you did with Dementia Choir. I was wondering, maybe you could do da-da-da-da. Because I think too many people in the industry worry so much about their ideas and keeping their ideas to themselves, and someone's going to steal my ideas. Do you know what? Sometimes your ideas get stolen. Sometimes they don't. I'm never going to intentionally steal someone's ideas, but I'm always very impressed when someone sends me ideas because it shows me they're thinking the way they do. Now, I'm particularly, that's what gets me excited, is people who are interested in developing as well as producing, because I think it's the two go hand in hand. I've never formally been a head of development. You call me that, but I've never been hired as a development producer or as a researcher ever. I've always been hired as a program maker all the way through. And only now when I'm running a company am I sort of developing.
There's quite a few people saying, do you take ideas from individuals? Can they bring ideas direct to you?
I mean, I think if you send ideas, it's not that we're necessarily going to take your ideas. It's more about us working with you. We have optioned about 2 ideas in 5 years. So that will tell you that not that often, to be honest with you. And one of them we're still completely backing. It's been nearly commissioned by YouTube, nearly commissioned by Channel 4, and it's huge, and nearly commissioned by someone else. Look, it may never happen. But that idea we really believed in, we thought was fresh and different. You've got to think about the fact that you asked before about development and how we do it. You know, we're brainstorming at least 3 times, if not 4 times a week. We have a paper review at least once a week. We're talking to the development team every day, all day. All we're doing is coming up with ideas. Rob and I spend our entire lives sitting down, discussing which idea, how, what idea. You might have an idea about a wedding or about dating or about food. It might be totally new. The best thing you can do is if you can bring talent to it and you say, oh, I went to uni with this guy. He's amazing. He's doing this thing, blah, blah, blah. Or she's doing whatever. Or my grand's doing the other. That is unstealable. That is the most clever thing to bring to me, because I won't take it from you. And if I think it's great, if you can show me talent, I'll get excited and I'll work with it. And I really will work with talent. And I'm really interested in, like our wonderful cleaner Maxine, there's nothing I wouldn't do to try and carry on working with her and to try and work ways to make it work for different channels and expand it. So I think bring talent.
Yeah. Okay. And there were some questions earlier on about, you talked about self-belief and getting people to take you seriously. How do you think people can do that now? Because it's so incredibly tough. How do you get people to take you seriously?
I mean, you've got to be a program maker. You've got to be making programs. I mean, ultimately, Donna, the only reason I've ever been taken seriously was I was a pretty good researcher. I was quite a good director. I then series produced for quite a long time, produced for a long time, and exec for a long time. I mean, I'm old, right? That's the first thing. I'm not young. I'm really old. I'm not as old as Donna. She's a lot older than me, but I am old and I'm nearly past it. But so the reason I can feel like that is because I am older. I've got the experience. I mean, you want to be able to feel you've done it and you've got it behind you. So now, if I sit in a pitch and anyone questions anything, and often it is people who have much less experience than me, and I have to bite my tongue, and sometimes I do get pissed off. But actually, truthfully, I've made a lot of shows. I've made live shows. I've made pre-recorded shows. I've made shows that have had huge ratings. I've made shows that haven't had huge ratings. I've made all sorts of all kinds of content. I've done some drama. I've done light entertainment. I've done everything. Hard-hitting documentaries. But I don't have and I think that's made me feel really confident. That's where my confidence comes from. I would say, take your time. Don't be in a rush. Why are you trying to do it? What's the point? Are you doing it to make money? Forget that, because it will come if you're good. It will just come at some point. I've lost all the money I made after years of making it, and I'll get money again. But I just don't care. It doesn't matter. I want to be able to, it does matter. I want to have nice bookshelves and I want to be able to live a nice life, but I'm not obsessed by it. And I think that the worst thing you can do is think short-termist, think about money, think it's all about your own precious idea, be collaborative, work with other people, find networks, be friendly, be kind to people, and try to behave well, because it's an industry full of really bad behavior and I don't like it.
Yeah. There's obviously Curve has an office in Wales and one in Dublin. So to what extent do you think it's important for indies to be part of nations and regions and out of London?
I think it's essential, and we set up in Wales just over 3 years ago, and we've got, we did have a lot of series coming out of there. I can't really answer how many programs are coming out of there, because nothing's coming out of anywhere right now. It's coming out of everywhere and nowhere. But I mean, we really believe in Wales. We backed it at a point, and I remember another very successful indie, who I can't mention, also set up in Wales at the same time as us, and they kind of like lasted a year there, and then they pulled out because it was very hard, because although the broadcasters talked a good game about the nations and regions, they didn't really put their money where their mouth was. It really mattered to us to put the money where their mouth was. So we stayed there, and we've really, we've got Sarah Swingler's running Wales. She's a bloody brilliant exec producer, and she's got an incredible team with her. We were just talking about Colin, one of our series producers. We've got incredible people working out of Wales. It's a really vibrant office. It's a little tiny version of what's going on in London, but it's its own unique feel to it. I think it really matters because you've got to be representative. And I'm a white girl from London with middle class desires and an Ocado shop coming every week. I don't know everything about everything, and I think actually having regions and nations involved in decision makings that we're making in London and out of London makes us just better and stronger. Diversity.
There's a couple of questions on here, and I know it's okay to ask you because I text first. You talk about having 4 kids and coming back from maternity, and there's a question on here about somebody coming back after caring duties for a long while. How do you juggle that, or how do you help people coming back from maternity or coming back returners after long break? What's your advice there?
I think it's really hard. I don't think I've got a glib piece of advice. The only piece of advice I say sort of falls into parenting, and I think it's true advice of life, which is that you should reduce your expectations. You shouldn't try and be brilliant. I mean, you mentioned before we came on the call, Donna, about homeschooling, and I couldn't help but laugh because, actually, I'm not doing any homeschooling particularly with my kids. My youngest is 12. I'm sort of like, is he on Netflix 24/7? No, he's not on 24/7. He's on slightly less, I would say. But actually, I think I see what matters when it matters. I think what I'm very good at doing, and my best advice is, it sometimes really matters to turn off everything to do with work and do the mummy, directly be mummy. And sometimes you have to be on the work mode. But actually, you've got to know what to do, when to do it. And actually, I'm lucky. I've got very lovely children, and hopefully they're all right. I think they've turned out okay-ish. They might not say the same, but they're not on this, so they can't say. And obviously I'm an industry great, so I can say what I like. I think it's a constant balance. I think it's bloody tough. I think reduce your expectations. Don't be mean on yourself. Look after yourself. You're the person who has to work. So you have to make sure that you're eating well, you're sleeping well, you're exercising, your brain is getting all the things that your brain needs to make it work. And then you can be a great mummy, and then you can be a great work person. But those things, they're not neat. It's messy, isn't it, Donna? You know that.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask 2 more questions. When you set up the company, did you have investment, and did you start with commissions in the bag?
When we set up the company, we actually were very lucky. So we had 25% of the company is owned by BBC Studios, who invested in us, and they have continued to be an amazing partner. They are unbelievably good to work with and kind, and we like them a lot. So that's been very lucky. Partly the reason we went with the BBC, obviously, like all indies, where everyone's offering you money all the time. I mean, honestly, you don't have to be, as you know, all of you will know, you can get investment. People can get investment, but where is it coming from? I'd watched venture capitalists as they pulled apart people I know, and they'd ripped up indies left, right, and centre. And I've seen very cynical companies set up and try and make a quick buck out of indies, and I don't like that either. The BBC is not that, so I like the BBC. So I've got history with the BBC, and it felt like a natural place. What was your other bit of the question, Dons?
So, and did you have commissions in the bag?
Yeah, so we did. We were, what you've got to bear in mind, that whole Cineflix thing, which I've kind of jumped over and just told you it was all a bit awful. It was very complicated, awful. And what we did is we took with us 2 commissions which have sustained. One was a tiny show called Salvage Hunters, which is worth a lot of money to us as a company, and is an amazing, and Discovery have been extraordinary, and that brand has been allowed to grow. It is now a behemoth of a commission. It exists in, I think, 7 different sort of shows we make for them around and about that area, and they are amazing. That tiny commission at that time was not that. It was a very small commission, but we believed in it, so we bought it. We paid money to buy that intellectual property, even though we'd created it. And the other show we did that with was Claimed and Shamed, which is also still on air.
So I'm just going to ask Camilla 2 last questions, but just jot her some notes or some thank yous just as we're wrapping up. So really quickly, Camilla, what have you learned from your mistakes?
That I'm going to constantly make mistakes, that I usually get myself into terrible trouble, that most days I'm in trouble with someone or another, and that I must just kind of, that I can't let it put me down, and I've got to keep going, just keep going.
Okay, and this Jerry O'Donoghue has put a great question that will wrap the session for me. For those of you who don't know, Camilla did celebrity, she did Big Brother for the Edinburgh TV Festival. So in the Big Brother house, did that prepare you for lockdown?
Oh, it's a really good question. I mean, I suppose it did to some degree, except for my children weren't in there. So frankly, it was a relief compared to actually being at home every day, all day with children and trying to work. It's a joy.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you for a fantastic session. So much insight, so much passion and honesty. My tip is throw yourself at people you want to work for. So do go and throw yourself at people who are really passionate. And we both better tell Catherine Mabb that she's going to get mobbed tomorrow because I put her email address in there. So thank you, Camilla. Thank you to everybody who's joined us, and good luck through the rest of lockdown, everyone. Take care, Camilla. Thank you. Bye-bye.